On a cold winter night in Stockholm, February 28, 1986, Sweden's Prime Minister Olof Palme and his wife Lisbeth were walking home from the cinema. Unprotected, exposed to the streets he loved and trusted, Palme became the target of a fatal attack. A single shadow in the night, a shot fired, and the nation was plunged into shock. No one witnessed the killer. No one knows the motive, and the mystery would endure for decades. Tonight, we revisit the final hours, the investigation, and the enduring questions of a political assassination that shook Sweden to its core. This is the story of the Olof Palme assassination. On the evening of February 28, 1986, Stockholm was cloaked in winter's icy silence. Olof Palme, Sweden's Prime Minister, and his wife Lisbeth had just left the cinema after watching a film. They were walking home along Sveavägen, a busy street in the city center, but surprisingly unguarded. Unlike most world leaders, Palme believed in accessibility and openness, a reflection of both his personal philosophy and Sweden's democratic values. That night, however, this openness would cost him his life. As they approached the intersection near Tunnelgatan, witnesses later reported a shadowy figure emerging from the darkness. A shot rang out. Palme was struck in the back at close range. Lisbeth was grazed but survived. The gunman disappeared immediately, melting into the winter night. Chaos ensued. Pedestrians ran, screaming. Emergency services were called. Within minutes, it became clear that the Prime Minister had been fatally wounded. The news spread across Sweden and the world, shaking the sense of security in a nation that had long prided itself on safety and social trust. The streets of Stockholm, usually bustling with ordinary citizens and ordinary life, now became a crime scene of international importance. Investigators cordoned off the area, collected evidence, and began the painstaking task of reconstructing the events. Eyewitness accounts were gathered, but they often conflicted. Some described a lone gunman, others suggested multiple individuals. The early confusion foreshadowed decades of ambiguity. Palme was a polarizing figure. Internationally, he criticized oppressive regimes and promoted human rights, including vocal opposition to apartheid in South Africa and military interventions in Central America. Domestically, his policies of progressive taxation, social welfare expansion, and labor reforms angered some. Each potential adversary presented a possible motive. The immediate investigation faced a daunting task: to identify a killer in a society unaccustomed to political violence of this magnitude. The first wave of suspects included both local extremists and foreign agents. Far-right groups disillusioned with Palme's socialist policies were questioned. Radical leftists, fearing political retaliation, were investigated as well. International intelligence services, aware of Palme's outspoken criticism, became indirect subjects of inquiry. The lines between personal vendettas, ideological extremism, and political assassination blurred rapidly. Despite exhaustive efforts, the night's events remained partially reconstructed. Palme had been walking with Lisbeth, who noticed nothing unusual until the fatal moment. The shots were fired from behind, close range, with precision, indicating either a trained hand or a carefully planned ambush. Footprints in the snow were analyzed, but no conclusive trail emerged. The gunman vanished as completely as the night consumed him. In the immediate months following the assassination, Stockholm became a city under scrutiny. Police presence increased, surveillance of political groups intensified. Citizens wondered whether their open society had been too naive, too trusting. The country mourned.
But it also entered a period of fear, uncertainty, and obsession with uncovering the truth.
Over the decades, the Palme assassination grew into a labyrinth of theories, suspects, and international intrigue. Investigators pursued hundreds of leads: extremist organizations, organized crime networks, disgruntled employees, foreign intelligence agencies, and individuals with personal grudges. Hundreds of interviews, thousands of documents, and thousands of man-hours were spent, yet the truth remained elusive. One suspect who dominated attention in the early years was Christer Pettersson, a small-time criminal with a history of violence. Witnesses tentatively identified him, and he was convicted briefly before being acquitted on appeal due to unreliable testimony. Other theories suggested South African involvement, pointing to Palme's outspoken criticism of apartheid. Soviet intelligence, Cold War rivalries, and secret operatives also came under suspicion. Each theory offered tantalizing clues, yet none produced the evidence required for conviction. Technological limitations of the time hindered the investigation. DNA testing, forensic ballistic analysis, and surveillance technology were in their infancy, leaving investigators reliant on eyewitness testimony, circumstantial evidence, and intuition. Contradictory accounts and incomplete data created endless frustration. Some believe the investigation itself became mired in bureaucracy and political pressure, limiting its ability to pursue the most dangerous possibilities. The assassination had profound effects on Swedish society. The country prided itself on transparency, openness, and trust in government institutions. Palme's death shattered this illusion. Political leaders became more guarded. Bodyguards and security protocols were expanded for future heads of state. Citizens, once accustomed to a high degree of personal freedom and safety, now confronted the reality that violence could penetrate even the heart of the capital. In 2020, decades after the assassination, Swedish authorities publicly named a new prime suspect, Stig Engström, known as the Skandia Man, a graphic designer who had been near the crime scene. Though Engström had long been considered a person of interest, he had died in 2000, making prosecution impossible. Some experts suggested that while Engström may have been present, it was still unclear whether he acted alone or if the murder was part of a larger conspiracy. Questions lingered. How did he obtain the weapon? Why act on that specific night? And was there anyone else involved? The Palme assassination endures not only as a cold case, but as a symbol of mystery, political tension, and societal vulnerability. It reminds the world that even open, democratic societies are not immune to violence, and that history often leaves us with questions rather than answers. Streets, witnesses, documents, and whispers of the past all tell fragments of the story. Fragments that, when assembled, create a portrait of a society shocked by sudden, inexplicable tragedy. Today, Olof Palme is remembered not just for his politics, but for the manner of his death, which continues to inspire debate, documentaries, and investigation. The assassination remains a haunting chapter in Sweden's history, a story of courage, political conviction, and the enduring question of who pulled the trigger that winter night on Sveavägen. The shadows of that night linger, and with them, the world is reminded of the fragility of trust and the persistent presence of mystery.